What's up? What's good? Welcome into the show. You're watching Philadelphia Eagles Now by Chat Sports. Chase Sr. here with you. And coming up, going to take a look at a new Eagles playoff path, which includes clinching scenarios, how the Eagles can win the NFC East, and how they can lock up a top seed this weekend against the Pittsburgh Steelers in Week 15. Speaking of that game, we'll be live for it. Eagles-Steelers watch party getting underway at 3 p.m. Eastern, 12 o'clock on the West Coast. The best place to experience an Eagles game day outside of being at the actual game. So be sure to hit that sub button, hit that bell icon, turn on your notifications. Therefore, anytime we go live, anytime we push out a show like this one, you will be notified. Let's begin here. It is wild how quickly the 2024 campaign has gone and how fast the year is gone. I feel as though just a few weeks ago, I was in Las Vegas covering the Super Bowl, doing a bunch of great interviews for Eagles Now, getting all types of content. We were at the NFL Combine back in March, preseason, training camp. Now, here we are, entering Week 15. The season is coming to a close, and we're getting ready for the NFL playoffs. We're getting ready for the 2025 calendar year. Last 4 games for Philadelphia here, at home against the Pittsburgh Steelers, on the road against the Washington Commanders, at home against the Dallas Cowboys, and at home against the New York Giants. 3 of their last 4 games inside the friendly confines of Lincoln Financial Field in South Philadelphia. And since that Rams game, we talked about that at the time, Philadelphia doesn't even need to board a flight from that point on, allowing them to rest up and recharge for the playoffs. The NFC playoff picture. Here's a look at things on this Wednesday, December 11th as we record this show. A big Thursday night game that has wild card and NFC West implications. Rams, Niners. And so by the time that you watch this video, if you're not hanging out with us live, that game will be decided. The records will be a little bit different, and it could change some things in the wild card hunt and in the NFC West. But elsewhere, you have the Detroit Lions at 12-1. They've clinched a playoff spot, a game lead over Philadelphia. Eagles jockeying for home field advantage with Detroit in the NFC playoffs. The Eagles 11-2, clinching a playoff spot with that win against Carolina last week. The Seattle Seahawks, they've won 4 games in a row, now 8-5, leading the aforementioned NFC West. We have a change in the NFC South. The Falcons are just collapsing right now. Kirk Cousins playing awful football, and the Buccaneers are rising up. They are 7-6, running the heck out of the ball. The defense has made some improvements because the NFC North is so loaded. The 3 wildcard teams include 2 teams from that division, 11-2 Minnesota Vikings, 9-4 Green Bay Packers, and then the Washington Commanders will play the New Orleans Saints this week. They are at 8-5. And speaking of that, NFC East standings, Philadelphia can win the division this week. We'll tell you how coming up here in just a moment, but Philadelphia in firm control of this division. 11-2, a 3-game lead on the Commanders, undefeated in the NFC East at 3-0 with 3 divisional games left. The Commanders at 8-5, 2-2 inside this division. Then you have the Cowboys and the Giants. They will not be making the playoffs. There are 3 relevant games that we're really going to be keeping close tabs on in Week 15. Of course, Steelers at Eagles, Commanders at Saints, and Packers at Seahawks. These games have some really big playoff implications and seeding implications for Philadelphia. The Birds at home against Pittsburgh, Keystone State rivalry game. Philadelphia, 4.5-point favorites. The over-under at 42.5, a little bit low. So the odds makers expecting this game to be a little bit of a defensive slugfest. This game taking place Sunday, December 15th, 4:25 p.m. Eastern, 1:25 p.m. Pacific. The Commanders will go to New Orleans and play the Saints. Saints going to be without quarterback Derek Carr. That's why the Commanders, 7-point favorites. You kind of want the Commanders to keep winning outside of beating Philadelphia next week because you want that to be the 2-7 matchup. You don't want to take on a scary Rams team in the 2-7. You kind of want to avoid the Niners in that 2-7 matchup. The Commanders are the team that you want, that we want to be that 7 seed, the over-under there at 43.5. That game will be in the early window. And then the Sunday night game Tremendous matchup. Fascinating for so many reasons. A Packers team that is going to be a wild card squad after losing their second game to the Lions this year. They're very talented. A little bit Jekyll and Hyde, as is Jordan Love, but they're very good. And the Packers, 3-point road favorites on the road against a Seattle team that's caught fire. It all started a few weeks ago when they came back to beat the Niners at the buzzer with that Geno Smith touchdown run. They haven't lost since then. And right now, they're leading the NFC West. That game, Sunday night, 8:20 p.m. Eastern, and the over-under at 46.5. As for how Philadelphia can clinch the NFC East in a top 3 seed this weekend. Scenario number 1, Eagles win, and the Commanders lose or tie. So if Philadelphia beats Pittsburgh, Commanders lose to New Orleans, the NFC East is Philadelphia's for the second time in 3 years. If the Eagles tie and the Commanders lose, Eagles still win this division. We do have Eagles at Commanders next week. Philadelphia with that opportunity to once again win this division. And they could also wrap it up next week with that win over the Commanders if the Commanders beat New Orleans. As for how Philadelphia can clinch a top 2 seed, Eagles win or tie, Commanders lose, and the Seahawks lose. Scenario number 2, Eagles win, Commanders tie, and Seahawks lose or tie. And then third, Eagles win and Commanders lose and the Seahawks tie. As we look ahead, I think a matchup that America wants to see, Detroit Lions, Philadelphia Eagles, NFC Championship game. Who would win if these two teams clashed? Let me know down in the comments section. I have said here on this show that I think Philadelphia matches up very well with Detroit, especially with that banged-up defense. A lot more to get to, but first, let's get to a new sponsor here on Philadelphia Eagles Now. That is our friends at Tushy. Save big on Tushy by going to hellotushy.com/chat. Is it selfish or is it brilliantly anti-capitalist to gift your one true love something that also benefits you? When it's a bidet, everybody wins because the gift of a clean booty keeps giving for life. A holiday gifting 101, why drop 2 or 3 Benjamins on a cooler that'll get used some of the time when you can spend a fraction of that cost on a bidet and your whole household will use it all the time? 'Tis the season for uncomfortable family dinners. Now's the time to upgrade your only escape hatch from that table by installing a soothing, refreshing bidet in your bathroom. A household full of holiday guests is a beautiful thing until you realize they're all endlessly wiping in your bathroom. It gets stinky, so give your toilet a fighting chance by installing a Tushy bidet. Here's some cool facts about Tushy. Fits 95% of toilets. 8.5-minute do-it-yourself install, fresh as tap water, and no outlet is needed. So right now, the Tushy bidet is dropping deep discounts on bidet life essentials that'll transform your bathroom habits and your butt for life. So give the gift of practical luxury that benefits everybody in your household. Head to hellotushy.com/chat. And do that now to grab your deal before it's gone. And don't forget to give us a shout out so that they know that Chat Sports sent you. It's a better way to do things. hellotushy.com/chat. We continue to move forward. NFC playoff picture. Let's go team by team here. Week 14, Detroit Lions beat the Green Bay Packers on Thursday Night Football. Such a highly entertaining game. And it was one that went back and forth, and Detroit ended up winning it. Dan Campbell put his nuts on the table, man, going for 4th downs on 5 opportunities there. Paid off big for the Lions. In Week 15, you have a Bills team coming off a loss. They will travel to Detroit in one of the games of the week. Games left for Detroit after that Bills game. On the road against Chicago. Jared Goff not good in the cold weather. So here's a scenario. What if the Lions lose against the Bills, lose against Chicago? Philadelphia wins against the Steelers and the Commanders. What does that mean, ladies and gentlemen? Eagles have the number 1 seed in the NFC. After that Chicago game, Detroit is on the road against the Niners. They're starting to heat up a little bit. and against Minnesota at home. The Lions have already clinched that playoff spot. For Philadelphia, beat the Panthers, squeaked out that win 22-16. Week 15 against Pittsburgh, games left. We mentioned them earlier at Washington, against Dallas, and New York at home. Eagles have clinched at the worst a 7 seed and a playoff spot. For the Seattle Seahawks, they beat the Cardinals 30-18, beat Arizona for the second time in 3 weeks. Looks like Kyler Murray having another late season collapse. In Week 15, against the Packers at home on Sunday Night Football as underdogs, games left for Seattle against Minnesota, at Chicago, and against the Rams. Difficult schedule for the Seahawks. Their playoff probability is at 65%. I only think one team from the NFC West gets in, barring a collapse for Washington. Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Week 14, beat the Raiders 28-13. Week 15, on the road against the Chargers. Tough game, cross-country travel. Games left at Dallas, against Carolina, and against New Orleans. Their playoff probability, 71%. We know Tampa Bay, Todd Bowles, and Baker Mayfield, they play Philadelphia tough. Minnesota Vikings, Week 14, beat the Falcons 42-21, and Kirko Chains' return to Minneapolis. Week 15, they take on the Bears on Monday Night Football at home. Games left after that, on the road against Seattle, always a hard place to play, against Green Bay and Detroit. Their playoff probability, about 99%. They're going to be a wild card team. They could still get the number 1 seed in the NFC as they jockey with Detroit right now. Green Bay Packers, Week 14, a loss against the Lions, as we talked about, 34-31. Game came down to the wire, field goal at the horn. Week 15, that Sunday night game against the Seahawks, and then after that, against New Orleans, at Minnesota, and against Chicago, their playoff probability at 97%. For Washington, a pretty good first year of that rebuild with Jayden Daniels at quarterback. Week 14 was their bye, late bye. Week 15 at Saints, and then home against Philadelphia, home against Atlanta, at Dallas. Their playoff probability, 79%. Give me Washington and a rookie quarterback at Lincoln Financial Field in the wild card round if the Eagles can't get that number 1 seed and they fall to number 2. The Rams as a 7 seed, certainly a dangerous team, but again, I only think one team from the NFC West gets in because I think 2 teams from the NFC East and 3 teams from the NFC North are playoff bound. The Niners as a 7 seed are also pretty dangerous because physically they can match up with Philadelphia, although on an even field, both teams healthy, both teams playing their best ball. I'll still take Philadelphia right now because San Francisco banged up, worn down, and a little bit broken spiritually, mentally, and physically. The Packers as a 7 seed, also a team to look out for, although I think they're going to be that 6 seed, and I think the playoff wildcard team's going to be as such. I think it's going to be NFC North, NFC North, NFC East for the 5, 6, 7. So what say you? Level of confidence that the Eagles can win a Super Bowl. Shout it out in the comments section. 1 to 100. 100 very confident. 1 not confident at all.